Doesn't Hurt to Ask by Trey Gowdy, a deep dive into the art of persuasion. Imagine walking into a room filled with people who hold the power to change your life. You have one chance to convince them, to make them see things your way. What do you say? How do you say it? Do you command their attention, or do you let the moment slip away? This is the essence of Doesn't Hurt to Ask by Trey Gowdy, a book that teaches the art of persuasion, storytelling, and effective communication. Trey Gowdy, a former federal prosecutor and congressman, knows firsthand the power of asking the right questions at the right time. Throughout his career, he's been in countless high-stakes situations where words could mean the difference between winning and losing. In this book, he distills the lessons he learned in courtrooms, congressional hearings, and political campaigns into a guide that can help anyone become a better communicator. Gowdy's central argument is that persuasion is not about force or manipulation. It's about asking the right questions, listening actively, and crafting compelling narratives. Whether you're a lawyer, a businessperson, a teacher, or someone trying to convince your family to take a vacation where you want to go, the ability to persuade is an invaluable skill. The power of questions. One of the book's biggest takeaways is the importance of asking good questions. Gowdy argues that people often try to persuade others by making statements, but the real power lies in framing the conversation through well-placed questions. For example, instead of saying, "We need to change our approach," a better way to get someone on board might be to ask, "What if we tried a different approach? What would that look like?" Questions make people think, and when people feel like they've arrived at a conclusion on their own, they're far more likely to support it. This technique is something trial lawyers use to great effect. Instead of telling a jury what to think, they ask a series of questions that lead the jury to the desired conclusion. When a witness is cross-examined, the lawyer isn't just looking for answers. He's guiding the witness and the jury to a certain perspective. Listening, the most underrated skill in persuasion. Gowdy stresses that persuasion isn't just about talking. It's also about listening. Many people think they're good listeners, but in reality, they're just waiting for their turn to speak. True listening means paying attention, understanding the other person's perspective, and responding thoughtfully. A skilled communicator doesn't just wait for a pause to jump in. They engage with what the other person is saying. They ask follow-up questions, reflect back key points, and show that they understand. This builds trust, which is essential for persuasion. In courtrooms, good lawyers don't just fire off arguments. They listen to witnesses, to the jury, and to opposing counsel. They adjust their approach based on the reactions they observe. The same principle applies in everyday life, whether in negotiations, job interviews, or personal relationships. Listening is what separates persuasive people from those who simply talk a lot. The role of storytelling in persuasion. People don't remember statistics, but they do remember stories. Gowdy explains that humans are wired to respond to narratives. A well-told story can move people in ways that facts and logic alone cannot. For example, if you're trying to convince someone to support a policy change, rattling off numbers might not be enough. But telling a compelling story about a real person affected by the issue can make a lasting impact. Gowdy himself mastered the art of storytelling during his time as a prosecutor. When presenting a case to a jury, he didn't just list out evidence, he built a narrative. He made jurors feel like they were part of the story, drawing them in emotionally. Great leaders, politicians, and salespeople all use storytelling as a tool. It's not about making things up, it's about framing reality in a way that resonates with others. The importance of credibility. One of the book's most practical lessons is that persuasion is impossible without credibility. If people don't trust you, they won't be persuaded by you, no matter how well you argue your point. Gowdy explains that credibility comes from consistency, honesty, and a willingness to admit when you're wrong. He shares examples from his career where he had to build trust with juries, constituents, and colleagues. One key takeaway is that admitting uncertainty or mistakes can actually increase credibility. Many people think they always need to appear confident, but sometimes saying, "I don't know," or "I was wrong about that," makes you seem more trustworthy. Practical applications of persuasion. Gowdy doesn't just talk about persuasion in the courtroom. He provides real-world applications that anyone can use. Some of the areas where these techniques are valuable include job interviews. Asking smart questions shows curiosity and engagement. Instead of just answering questions, try turning the conversation into a two-way dialogue. Sales and negotiations. Instead of aggressively pushing a product, ask customers about their needs and concerns. People don't like being sold to, but they do like solutions to their problems. Leadership. Good leaders don't just issue commands. They persuade their teams by listening, asking questions, and telling compelling stories. Personal relationships. Whether convincing your spouse to try a new restaurant or getting your kids to do their homework, persuasion is a skill that can make everyday life smoother. Overcoming resistance. Not everyone will be immediately persuaded, and that's okay. Gowdy explains that some people resist persuasion simply because they feel pressured. One of the best ways to overcome resistance is to give people an out. Instead of saying, "You have to do this," try saying, "I'd love for you to consider this. What do you think?" When people feel like they have a choice, they are more likely to engage. This is why skilled negotiators always leave room for the other party to feel like they're making a decision, rather than being forced into one. Final thoughts: the art of asking and persuading. At its core, "Doesn't hurt to ask" is about empowering people with the ability to communicate effectively. Whether in a courtroom, a boardroom, or a living room, the ability to persuade is one of the most valuable skills a person can have. Trey Gowdy's approach is practical, engaging, and backed by real-life experience. He teaches that persuasion isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most thoughtful, the most prepared, and the most credible. By mastering the art of asking the right questions, listening deeply, and telling compelling stories, anyone can become a more persuasive and influential communicator. So the next time you hesitate to ask for what you want, remember, it doesn't hurt to ask. Stay tuned for more enlightening content. Head over to www.mybooksummary.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share the magic with friends. And let's grow together through the power of books and interesting stories.